A stray dog brought a black trash bag to a hospital, but when they opened the bag, the shouts of the doorman echoed through the entrance of Mercy General Hospital in rural Pennsylvania as a thin, rain-soaked dog insisted on entering the building. The animal carried something in its mouth, a black trash bag that left a trail of water wherever it went. Emily Bennett let out a deep sigh upon hearing the commotion. Her morning had already started off rough with a difficult patient in the geriatrics ward. And now, at the end of her shift, all she wanted was to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee in the staff lounge. But when she saw through the window the dog being repeatedly shooed away by Harold, the security guard, something stirred inside her. The dog kept coming back stubbornly, always with that black bag dangling from its mouth. "This is the third time I've chased off this mutt today," Harold complained as she approached. "I already warned I'd call animal control if he keeps showing up." "Wait, Harold," Emily said, adjusting her nurse's badge on her light blue uniform. "Look how persistent he is. It's like he wants to show us something. The dog, its golden fur darkened by street grime, stopped a few feet away, its eyes fixed on Emily. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, but the animal remained there, trembling slightly, still holding onto the bag. "Don't start that again, nurse. I've got enough problems at the front desk without a flea-ridden dog wandering into the hospital." Harold crossed his arms, firm in his stance. Emily wasn't one to break rules, but something about that dog's gaze touched her deeply. Maybe it was the exhaustion from her night shift, or perhaps it was because she'd grown up on a farm and always had a soft spot for animals. "I just want to see what's in the bag," she argued. "If it's really just trash, you're right, we'll send the dog away. But what if it's something else?" "Something else like what?" Harold uncrossed his arms, now curious. At that moment, Dr. Nathan Miller, newly hired for the hospital's rural outreach program, stepped out through the main door. With his spotless white coat and neatly trimmed beard, he was a stark contrast to Emily, who had taken a few steps toward the dog, her clothes damp from the rain. "Is there a problem here?" Nathan asked, taking in the unusual scene. "This dog won't leave, doctor," Harold explained, "and now the nurse wants to check what's inside this dirty trash bag." Nathan looked at the animal, then at Emily, whose expression showed a determination he recognized. In the few months they'd worked the same shift, he'd noticed how dedicated she was to her patients, especially the underprivileged elderly who filled the small regional hospital. "If she wants to check, what's the harm?" Nathan shrugged, moving closer to Emily. "We can look together, just to be safe." The dog, as if understanding the conversation, took a few hesitant steps toward them, still gripping the bag. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. "Easy, buddy," Emily said, crouching down slowly. "No one's going to hurt you." The dog stopped, staring intently at her. Then, very slowly, it placed the bag on the ground and took 2 steps back, never taking its eyes off it. A low whimper escaped its throat. Nathan, who had initially kept his distance, crouched beside Emily. Together they examined the black bag, wet and stuck with a few leaves. "Could be anything," Nathan murmured. "Are you sure you want to open it?" Emily nodded, carefully, reaching for the bag. As she touched it, she noticed it wasn't as heavy as it looked, but something inside was moving. A shiver ran down her spine. Gently, she untied the knot sealing the bag. Nathan moved closer, helping her hold the edges of the bag. The security guard, Harold, overcome by curiosity, also leaned in to look. When they opened the bag, silence fell over the 3 of them. Inside, wrapped in an old, damp cloth, 6 tiny kittens huddled together, trembling. Their eyes were still closed. They couldn't be more than a few days old. "My God," Emily whispered, bringing a hand to her mouth. "How did he know where to bring them?" Nathan asked, genuinely amazed. The dog sat down, still keeping its distance, but its eyes seemed to plead for help. Harold shook his head in disbelief. "This is a job for animal control, not us. A hospital is for people, not animals." Emily looked at the kittens, then at the dog, and finally at Nathan. Something in his gaze gave her courage. "They won't survive another day in this weather," she argued, "and animal control doesn't open until Monday." Nathan examined the kittens with a clinical eye. They're hypothermic. They need warmth. And food urgently, he noted, surprising Emily with his knowledge. Sensing her puzzled look, he added, "My father was a vet. I grew up helping at his clinic." A faint, almost imperceptible mewl came from the bag like a cry for help. That was enough for Emily to make her decision. "I'll take them to the nurse's break room just until Monday," she said firmly. "It's only 2 days. No one has to know." Nathan hesitated for a moment, glancing at the kittens and then at the dog, who remained attentive to their every move. "Dr. Blackwell will fire you if she finds out," Harold warned. "You know how she is about hospital hygiene rules." "Then no one will tell her," Emily replied, already carefully gathering the bag. Nathan, after a brief pause, took the coat draped over his arm and offered it to her. "Use this to wrap them. It'll keep them warmer than that damp cloth." Their eyes met briefly, and Emily realized she'd gained an ally. Gently, she transferred the kittens into the coat. "What about him?" Nathan asked, pointing to the dog, who was still watching from a distance. "We can't bring a dog into the hospital," Emily admitted regretfully, "but we can leave some food and water for him outside." As if understanding, the dog lay down under the small awning by the entrance, seemingly determined to stay put. Emily and Nathan slipped in through the back of the hospital, avoiding the main hallways. The nurse's break room was in a quieter corridor near the supply area. With the reduced weekend shifts, it would be easier to keep the kittens hidden. Once inside, Emily quickly improvised a bed using cardboard boxes and clean linens from the supply closet. Nathan, who should have left over half an hour ago, stayed to help. "They need special formula," he remarked, watching the kittens settle into their makeshift nest, still shivering. "Regular milk could kill them." Emily bit her lip, worried. "I don't know where to get that on a Saturday afternoon in Willowbrook." Nathan pulled out his phone. "Leave it to me. I know someone who can help." As he stepped away to make a call, Emily examined each kitten. 3 were white with black spots, 2 were completely black, and 1 was orange. All so small and fragile. "What have I gotten myself into?" she murmured to herself, but without a hint of regret. "My friend Trevor runs a vet clinic in the next town over," Nathan explained when he returned. "He'll set aside formula and bottles for kittens. I can pick them up in an hour." "You didn't have to get involved in this," Emily said, genuinely surprised by his willingness to help. Harold shrugged, a half-smile appearing beneath his neatly trimmed beard. "I've always liked animals. My father wanted me to follow in his footsteps, but I ended up choosing human medicine. I guess this is my chance to honor his legacy a little." There was something in his tone, a subtle melancholy that made Emily realize there was more to the story. "Your father," she began hesitantly. "Passed away 6 months ago," Harold finished, looking away. "That's when I decided to take the job at this rural hospital. I needed a change." A knowing silence settled between them, broken only by the faint mews of the kittens. "I'll go get the supplies," he finally said. "Can you keep an eye on them until I get back?" "Of course," Emily replied. "My shift is over, but I'll say I'm staying late to organize patient files. No one questions unpaid overtime around here." They exchanged a conspiratorial smile, and Harold left. Emily stayed there, gazing at the tiny creatures that had completely transformed her Saturday. Outside, the rain had started pouring again, and she couldn't help but think about the dog at the hospital entrance. What an extraordinary creature, able to understand that those kittens needed help and bringing them exactly to the right place. Life at the small Willowbrook Hospital was predictable. Emily had grown accustomed to the routine since moving to town nearly a year ago. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, she could have chosen to stay in the city, but something had called her to the countryside. Maybe it was the memory of her grandmother, who had been a midwife in rural areas, and told stories about bringing lives into the world under difficult conditions, or maybe it was just exhaustion from city life. Whatever the reason, here she was now, with 6 kittens smuggled into the hospital and a newly arrived doctor who, surprisingly, had become her partner in this little adventure. Harold's return 2 hours later brought not just bottles and special formula but also a portable heater, medication, vitamins, and a manual on caring for newborn kittens. Wow, you thought of everything, Emily remarked, impressed. Trevor went a little overboard, Harold smiled, setting the items on the table. He said he'll stop by tomorrow to check on the kittens and give us more instructions. Us? Emily raised an eyebrow. Well, I figured we could share the responsibility, he replied, slightly embarrassed. You can't feed them every 2 hours alone, she smiled, feeling an odd relief at not having to face this alone. Thank you. I really don't know how I would have managed without your help. Together they prepared the bottles following the Mai, instructions left by his veterinarian friend. Each kitten needed to be fed with extreme care, held in a specific position to prevent milk from entering their lungs. How do you know how to do this so well? Emily asked, watching the ease with which Harold fed one of the black kittens. I helped with a lot of births at my father's clinic, he explained, focused on the task. Orphaned litters were common, I learned early. There was something fascinating about seeing this man with his large, precise hands, used to handling medical emergencies, now gently cradling a tiny being that fit in his palm. After feeding, the kittens needed to be stimulated to relieve themselves, another procedure Emily learned from Harold. It was meticulous, time-consuming work, but oddly satisfying. What about the dog? Harold asked as they put away the supplies. Do you think he'll be okay out there in this rain? Emily looked out the window. Night had fallen and the rain had eased to a steady drizzle. I'll take him a blanket and some food, she decided. I don't think he'll be leaving any time. Soon? I'll go with you, offered Nathan. I want to check if he isn't injured. They crossed Mercy General Hospital, trying not to draw attention, which wasn't hard on a Saturday night with a reduced staff. At the entrance, they found the dog exactly where they had left it, lying under the small overhang that partially shielded it from the rain. Seeing them, the animal lifted its head but didn't approach. He's scared, said Nathan, crouching a few feet away. He must have been mistreated. Emily placed the bowl of kibble they had gotten from the hospital kitchen and a dish of fresh water near the animal. Thank you for bringing the puppies to us, she said softly to the dog, not expecting it to understand but feeling the need to express her gratitude. To their surprise, the dog stood up and cautiously approached the food, keeping a watchful eye for any sudden movements. It began eating eagerly, clearly famished. He needs a bath and veterinary care, Nathan observed, noticing some old wounds on the animal's body. One thing at a time, Emily replied with a tired smile. We're already bending practically every hospital rule for today. When they returned to check on the puppies, they found Mrs. Reynolds, the most senior nursing technician at the hospital, standing in front of the makeshift box, arms crossed, and an unreadable expression on her face. Emily's heart raced. Mrs. Reynolds was known for her strict adherence to rules and her unwavering loyalty to the administrative director, Dr. Catherine Blackwell. So this is why you two have been acting so strange, the grey-haired woman said, looking from the puppies to the two professionals who had just entered. Mrs. Reynolds, I can explain, Emily began, feeling her face flush. The older woman raised her hand, cutting her off. No need. Gary, the security guard, already told me everything. What do you plan to do with these little ones? Nathan stepped forward. We'll take care of them until Monday and then find them a proper home. I promise it won't affect hospital operations at all. Mrs. Reynolds studied the puppies for a long moment, then looked at Emily and Nathan. Her stern expression softened slightly. My daughter has a farm outside the city, she finally said. She always takes in rescued animals. I can talk to her tomorrow. Relief washed over Emily's face. That would be wonderful, Mrs. Reynolds. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, the nursing technician warned. If Dr. Blackwell finds out about this before Monday, we'll all be in trouble. That woman would fire the entire hospital over. A misplaced button. Imagine what she'd do over cats. Mrs. Reynolds wasn't exaggerating. Catherine Blackwell, the administrative director of Mercy General Hospital, was notorious for being ruthless when it came to institutional rules. A doctor by training, she had left clinical practice years ago to focus on hospital management, and her cold, calculated leadership style was feared by all. Under her command, the hospital's financial performance had improved, but the work environment had never been more tense. We'll be discreet, Nathan promised. No one besides the three of us and Gary will know. Mrs. Reynolds nodded, still serious. but her eyes betrayed a glimmer of tenderness as she glanced back at the puppies. "I'll bring some warmer blankets from the laundry," she declared, already heading for the door, "and maybe some milk from the kitchen." When they were alone again, Emily and Nathan exchanged surprised looks. "Well, seems we've gained another ally," he remarked, smiling. "Who would have thought Mrs. Reynolds, the terror of interns, has a soft spot for cats?" Emily replied, feeling lighter. The next few hours passed in a routine of feedings every 2 hours. Nathan insisted that Emily rest for a while on the living room couch while he handled the overnight shift. "I'm used to sleepless nights," he assured her. "Medical residency is basically training for living without sleep." She eventually agreed, more out of exhaustion than persuasion. Lying on the uncomfortable couch, she watched Nathan move quietly around the room, tending to each kitten with a gentleness that contrasted with his strong appearance. There was something extraordinarily attractive about a man who showed such kindness to such fragile creatures. It was her last thought before falling asleep. Sunday dawned with a surprisingly clear sky after the previous night's storm. Emily woke with a start, disoriented for a moment until she remembered the events of the day before. She sat up quickly, looking for Nathan and the kittens. He was there, asleep in a chair near the cat's box, his head tilted uncomfortably to the side. The kittens slept peacefully in their now better-equipped nest, thanks to the extra blankets Mrs. Reynolds had brought. Emily stood up quietly and approached to check on the little ones. They seemed warmer and less restless than the night before, a good sign. Her movement, however, woke Nathan, who opened his eyes immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. "Everything's fine," she smiled. "You should have woken me for the last feeding." "You needed rest more than I did," Nathan replied, stretching. "Besides, it was easy. They're starting to get used to the bottle." The sound of the door opening interrupted their conversation. Mrs. Reynolds entered, carrying a tray with coffee and bread. "I figured you'd be starving," she said, setting the tray on the table. "And I thought it'd be better for you to eat here than risk being seen in the cafeteria." "You're an angel, Mrs. Reynolds," Emily thanked her, only then realizing how hungry she was. "Angel nothing, I'm just practical," the older woman replied, though there was affection in her voice. "I spoke to my daughter Deborah. She'll stop by after lunch to meet the kittens and see what they need." The hospital routine on Sundays was quieter, just emergencies and basic care for inpatients. That worked in their favor. Nathan, who was technically off duty, offered to stay and help with the kittens, allowing Emily to complete her half-day shift without raising suspicions. When she returned in the early afternoon, she found not only Nathan but also an older man meticulously examining the kittens. "This is Trevor, my vet friend I mentioned," Nathan introduced. "Nice to meet you." The vet smiled, extending his hand. "Your friend here is doing an admirable job with these little ones. They're all doing well considering the circumstances." "Thanks to his help," Nathan added. "And the dog?" Emily asked, suddenly remembering the animal that had brought the kittens. "He's fine too," Nathan assured her. "I took him food this morning. He's still in the same spot as if standing guard." Trevor finished examining the last kitten and carefully placed it back in the box. "That story about the dog bringing the kittens is incredible," the vet remarked. "In over 30 years of practice, I've seen some surprising things, but a stray dog rescuing kittens is new even for me." "Do you think he could be their father?" asked Mrs. Reynolds, who had just entered the room. Trevor laughed. "Impossible. Dogs and cats are different species. They can't reproduce, but some dogs have a very strong protective instinct. He must have found the kittens abandoned and somehow knew they needed help." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "What about the puppy's mother?" Emily asked. "She might be out there looking for them." The vet shook his head thoughtfully. "It's possible, but unlikely. If the dog found the puppies in a bag, someone deliberately abandoned them. The mother might have been discarded too, or kept away from them. The implied cruelty of that possibility left a heavy silence in the room. "Well, the important thing is they're safe now," Nathan finally said. "And thanks to your training, Trevor, we're able to care for them properly." The vet began packing up his equipment. You're doing a great job, but they'll need constant care for at least 3 weeks until they open their eyes and start walking. After that, the work only increases. Mrs. Reynolds' daughter will help, Emily explained. She has a farm and is used to caring for rescued animals. Excellent, Trevor approved. As for the dog, I suggest he gets checked too. From your description, he's probably malnourished and might have parasites. I can take a look at him before I leave. Nathan nodded gratefully. That would be great. I've been worried about him. As the vet and Nathan stepped out to examine the dog at the entrance, Mrs. Reynolds approached Emily. My daughter Deborah is coming, she informed her. She'll stop by around 4, and she brought news you won't like. Emily felt a knot in her stomach. What? Dr. Blackwell decided to do a surprise inspection at the hospital tomorrow morning, the nursing assistant revealed. One of the cleaners overheard her on the phone. Tomorrow? Emily ran a hand through her hair, concerned. The puppies need to leave here today, then. That's what I thought, Mrs. Reynolds agreed. Deborah can take them, but we need to plan for everything they'll need. Emily bit her lip, thoughtful. I'll talk to Nathan and Trevor as soon as they're back. Maybe the vet can give your daughter more guidance. Deborah arrived promptly at 4, a sturdy middle-aged woman with the same determined look as her mother, but a warmer smile. She brought a proper carrier for the puppies and listened carefully to Trevor's instructions on feeding, hygiene, and specific care. Don't worry, she assured them after taking detailed notes. I've handled orphaned puppies before. They'll be in good hands. Can we visit? Emily asked, already feeling strangely attached to the little ones. Of course. Deborah smiled. Mom has the address. You're welcome any time. The transfer of the puppies to the carrier was done with extreme care. Each one got a final feeding before the 30-minute trip to the farm. What about the dog? Emily asked, glancing out the window. The animal still stood guard at the hospital entrance. He needs care too, said Trevor, who had given him a basic exam. He has some old injuries and is malnourished, but he's young and strong. With proper food and parasite treatment, he'll recover fully. I can take him too, Deborah offered. There's plenty of space at the farm. Nathan and Emily exchanged glances. I'm not sure he'll want to go, Nathan remarked. He seems determined to stay here. What do you mean? Trevor asked. It's hard to explain. Emily searched for the right words. Ever since he brought the puppies, he hasn't left that spot. It's like he's standing guard, or waiting for someone, Nathan added thoughtfully. Well, let's try, Deborah decided. If he won't go, we can figure something else out. But the dog, in fact, refused to get into Deborah's car. Even with food as an incentive, he wouldn't stray more than a few feet from the hospital entrance. I've never seen anything like it, declared Mrs. Reynolds' daughter after several failed attempts. It's like he has a mission here. Let's leave him for now, suggested Trevor. I can come back tomorrow for a more thorough exam. In the meantime, I've left basic meds you can administer. With the puppies on their way to the farm and the dog still at his post, Emily and Nathan found themselves alone in the nurse's break room, cleaning up the last traces of the kittens. Presents. You know we could be in serious trouble if Dr. Blackwell finds out what we did, right? Commented Emily, putting away the last rags. It was worth it, Nathan replied simply. Those kittens wouldn't have survived another night in that bag. In the rain. Emily smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. Thank you for helping me. You didn't have to. Nathan seemed about to say something when the door abruptly opened. Both froze at the sight of who entered. Dr. Catherine Blackwell herself, with her impeccable posture and perpetual look of disapproval. Behind her, Gary, the night security guard, looked extremely uncomfortable. Nurse Bennett, Dr. Miller, she greeted coldly. Care to explain what you're doing here after hours? Nathan recovered first. We were just organizing some supplies, Doctor. The director's sharp eyes scanned the room, briefly lingering on the portable heater they'd forgotten to turn off. I received some interesting information from Gary, she continued, her voice controlled. Something about a dog at the hospital entrance and the two of you acting suspiciously since yesterday. Emily felt her blood run cold. It's not what it looks like, Doctor, she began, but was cut off by the director's abrupt gesture. Spare me the creative explanations, Nurse Bennett. Gary told me you brought animals into the hospital. That's a serious violation of sanitation protocols. The animals are no longer here, Nathan interjected calmly, and we took every precaution to avoid compromising the hospital area. Dr. Miller, you're new here, so perhaps you don't grasp the severity of this. The director's voice was sharp. This is a hospital, not a shelter for stray animals. There are rules, protocols, hygiene standards to follow. With all due respect, Doctor, Nathan maintained his professional tone, as a physician, I can assure you there was no compromise to hospital hygiene. The animals were confined to this room, which has no direct contact with patients. Catherine narrowed her eyes. Both of you, in my office, now. Dr. Blackwell's office was at the end of the administrative hallway, a spacious room overlooking the hospital's inner garden. Decorated with austerity, the walls displayed only diplomas and professional certifications. No personal photos, no decorative items hinting at anything beyond her impeccable professionalism. Sit, she ordered, pointing to the two chairs in front of her imposing desk. Emily and Nathan obeyed in silence. The nurse's heart pounded in her chest, more out of concern for the dog still at the entrance than for her own job. It was obvious they were about to face serious consequences. I'll be direct, Catherine began, sitting with perfect posture. What you did is unacceptable under any circumstances, but especially in a hospital struggling to maintain its accreditation standards with limited resources. Dr. Blackwell, Emily tried but was interrupted again. I'm not finished, the director cut in. This hospital serves a vulnerable population from rural Pennsylvania. We can't afford to compromise our structure over misplaced sentimentality. It wasn't sentimentality, Harold said firmly. It was basic humanity. Those puppies would have died if we hadn't intervened. Dr. Miller, there are proper channels for situations like this, Dr. Blackwell replied, her tone unchanged. If you had contacted me, I could have directed you to the correct procedures, which do not include turning a healthcare staff lounge into an impromptu animal shelter. You would have helped? Emily asked, unable to hide the disbelief in her voice. Something almost imperceptible shifted in the director's gaze. I believe you have a rather limited view of who I am and what I value, Nurse Bennett. My job is to ensure this hospital operates at the highest possible standards with the limited resources we have. That doesn't mean I lack compassion for situations that call for it. I apologize if I seem skeptical, Doctor, Emily replied, finding her courage. But your reputation in this hospital isn't exactly one of being open to exceptions. Dr. Blackwell adjusted her glasses meticulously. Reputations don't always reflect the full reality, Doctor, but that's beside the point. The fact is, you violated important protocols, and as the administrator, I can't ignore that. We understand, Harold said. We're prepared to face the consequences of our actions. The director studied them both for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You'll both receive formal warnings that will be added to your professional records, she finally declared. Additionally, I require a formal letter explaining the circumstances and acknowledging the protocol breach, with a commitment that similar situations will be handled through the proper channels in the future. It was a lighter punishment than they'd expected, Emily thought, feeling cautious relief. What about the dog? She asked, unable to hold back her concern. Dr. Blackwell raised an eyebrow. What dog? The dog that brought the puppies, Emily explained. He's still at the hospital entrance. We couldn't get him to leave. And why is that my problem? The director questioned. Because he needs care, Harold interjected. He's malnourished and has some old injuries. A vet examined him today and left medication, but he needs follow-up. And I suppose you expect me to allow a stray dog to stay at the hospital entrance. The director's tone was almost mocking. It would only be temporary, Emily argued, just until we find him a permanent home. Dr. Blackwell sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose, a rare sign of humanity that surprised the two professionals before her. You have no idea the pressures I face to keep this hospital running, she remarked, more to herself than to them. Every day balancing budgets, arguing with suppliers, justifying expenses to a board that only cares about numbers. There was a moment of silence, during which neither Emily nor Harold dared to speak. Finally, Dr. Blackwell put her glasses back on and resumed her formal demeanor. The animal can stay in the outside area near the service entrance for no more than a week, she stated. During that time, you must find a permanent solution, and under no circumstances is he to enter the hospital. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, Harold replied, unable to fully hide his surprise. And I'd like to see the vet's report, the director added. If we're allowing the animal to stay, I need proper documentation to justify it to my superiors. Yes, ma'am, Emily agreed quickly. As they left the office, still stunned by the unexpected turn of the conversation, Dr. Blackwell called them back. One more thing, she said, her tone returning to its usual pragmatism. I want daily reports on the animal's condition, and no feeding it food meant for patients or staff. You'll have to bring food from home or buy it with your own money. The hospital doesn't have a budget for this. Understood, doctor, they replied in unison. Once in the hallway, out of earshot of the director, Emily and Nathan exchanged incredulous looks. What just happened? Emily whispered. I thought she was going to fire us on the spot. Maybe Dr. Frostbite has a heart after all, Nathan murmured, a slow smile forming on his face. Emily couldn't help but smile too, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Not only had they escaped severe punishment, but they'd also gotten official permission to care for the dog, at least temporarily. Let's check on him, she suggested, already heading toward the hospital entrance. The dog was still there, lying patiently under the small shelter, as if he knew his fate was being decided at that very moment. When he saw them, he lifted his head, his attentive eyes following their every move. Hey there, buddy, Nathan said softly, crouching at a safe distance. Looks like you're staying with us a little longer. The dog shifted slightly, still cautious but showing no fear. We should give him a name, Emily remarked, crouching beside Nathan. How about Hero? Nathan suggested. After all, he saved those puppies. Emily smiled, watching the dog, who now seemed to be studying them with curiosity. Hero, she repeated, testing the name. I think it fits. As if approving the choice, the dog stood and took 2 steps toward them, his tail wagging, slightly for the first time since they'd found him. That night, after improvising a more comfortable shelter for Hero in the service area, as authorized by the director, Emily drove home with a mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. The weekend had been an emotional roller coaster, and she could hardly believe everything that had happened in just 48 hours. As she drove through the quiet streets of Willowbrook, she couldn't stop thinking about Nathan, about how he'd proven himself not just as a competent colleague, but as an unexpected ally in this adventure. There was something about him, maybe the combination of professional skill and genuine kindness, that intrigued and drew her in. Arriving at the small apartment she'd rented since moving to town, Emily was greeted by Chloe, her 3-year-old cat who meowed insistently, complaining about her prolonged absence. Sorry, sweetheart, Emily murmured, stroking the cat's soft fur. You wouldn't believe the weekend I've had. As if understanding, Chloe purred and rubbed against her legs. We found 6 puppies who will grow up to be as big as you one day, she continued, talking to the cat as she prepared a simple dinner for herself. And there's a heroic dog who saved them. The phone rang, interrupting her one-sided conversation with Chloe. It was Nathan. Sorry to call so late, he began. Just wanted to make sure you got home okay. Just got in, Emily replied, feeling an inexplicable warmth at the sound of his voice. Any updates on Hero? Actually, yes, Nathan said, his tone bright. I stopped by before heading home and managed to convince him to take an improvised bath. He looks much more presentable now. You gave him a bath? Emily was genuinely impressed. How? Patience and a lot of boiled chicken, Nathan laughed. Apparently, the way to a dog's trust is through his stomach, just like they say about men. Emily laughed too, feeling light despite her fatigue. Impressive, Dr. Miller. I always thought your talents were limited to human patience. I have many hidden talents, he replied, a smile evident in his voice, some of which you might discover if... He hesitated for a moment. If you'd agree to have dinner with me tomorrow after work. The question caught Emily by surprise, though not unpleasantly. Dinner, she repeated, buying time to process the unexpected invitation. Yes, dinner, confirmed Nathan, his tone now slightly nervous. To celebrate the success of our rescue operation and, well, to get to know each other better outside the hospital. Emily smiled, grateful he couldn't see the blush she knew was coloring her cheeks. I'd love to, she answered sincerely. Great, his voice rose with barely contained enthusiasm. Shall I pick you up at 8? Perfect. After hanging, Emily stared at the phone for a long moment, still processing the conversation. Chloe rubbed against her legs again, meowing as if demanding an explanation. Looks like I have a date tomorrow, she told the cat, who tilted her head as if assessing the situation. Strange how things happen, isn't it? If that dog hadn't shown up with the puppies. On Monday, Mercy General Hospital returned to its normal routine. The full staff was back after the weekend, the hallways busier, and the always dreaded inspection by Dr. Catherine Blackwell proceeded with her usual rigor. To everyone's surprise, the director not only scrutinized every department with eagle eyes, but also made a brief stop at the service area to check on the dog. He seems to be in better shape, she remarked to Mrs. Reynolds, who was accompanying the inspection. I see he's already received basic care. Dr. Miller has a way with him, replied the nursing assistant. He even managed to give the little guy a bath. Catherine nodded, her face revealing nothing beyond professional assessment. Make sure the area is cleaned daily, and keep me updated on the progress of finding him a permanent home. Yes, ma'am, agreed Mrs. Reynolds, watching curiously as the director strode away. News about the rescued dog and the kittens quickly spread among the staff and even some patients. To Emily's surprise, many offered help, some bringing food for Rocky, others inquiring about adopting the kittens when they were older. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly patient hospitalized for 2 weeks with respiratory complications, began asking for daily updates about the animals. Before my hip accident, I had 3 cats, she told Emily during her morning checkup. Now my daughter is taking care of them, and I miss them so much. The nurse noticed how the 78-year-old woman's eyes lit up when talking about the animals, a striking change from the apathy she'd shown for days. Would you like to meet Rocky? Emily impulsively suggested. He's adjusting well, and maybe a visit would do you both good. The elderly woman's face brightened. Could I? Would that be allowed? Emily hesitated. Technically, it wasn't allowed. Dr. Blackwell had been clear. The dog was to stay outside. But seeing the genuine excitement on Mrs. Henderson's face, who until then had barely responded during procedures, made Emily decide. Here's what we'll do. I'll talk to Dr. Miller. If he approves it medically, we'll arrange a short visit. You can use the wheelchair and we'll take you outside to meet Rocky. How does that sound? That would be wonderful, dear. The woman clasped Emily's hands with surprising strength. It's been so long since I've seen the son. Nathan not only approved the idea, but offered to personally accompany the patient. I think it would be therapeutic for her, he agreed when Emily explained the plan. Actually, it could be beneficial for several of our long-term patients. There are robust studies on the benefits of animal interaction for recovery, especially in the elderly. Do you think Dr. Blackwell would approve? Asked Emily, still hesitant. Harold considered for a moment. Let's present it as a complementary, therapeutic approach with all necessary precautions. If we structure it well with scientific backing, she might be more receptive than we think. By the end of that morning, Mrs. Henderson had left her room for the first time in nearly 10 days. With Emily carefully pushing the wheelchair and Harold walking alongside, monitoring her vitals, the elderly woman was taken to the outdoor area, where Hero was staying. The dog, who had started gaining weight and looked much better after his bath and medication, watched the trio approach with cautious curiosity. He's beautiful, Mrs. Henderson remarked, her face softening with a smile Emily had never seen before. Can I pet him? Let's see if he allows it, Harold replied, signaling for Hero to come closer. To everyone's surprise, the dog, who still kept his distance from other staff, stood up and slowly walked over to Mrs. Henderson. He stopped inches from her chair, looking directly into her face. Hello, sweetheart, Mrs. Henderson said, slowly extending her hand. You were so brave saving those kittens. As if understanding every word, Hero stepped closer, and gently pressed his head against the patient's outstretched hand. Emily and Harold exchanged surprised glances. "It's remarkable how he seems to choose who to trust," Harold murmured. The next 15 minutes were filled with a touching interaction. Mrs. Henderson spoke softly to the dog, who remained gentle by her side, allowing her to pet him and even resting his head in her lap at one point. "He knows I'm sick," the elderly woman said, looking at Emily with teary eyes. "They always know." When they finally returned to the room, Emily noticed a visible change in the patient. Her cheeks had more color, her posture was straighter, and for the first time in days, she asked to sit in the armchair instead of going straight to bed. "Can I visit him again tomorrow?" she asked as Emily checked her blood pressure. "If Dr. Harold approves, of course." The nurse smiled, pleased with the numbers on the monitor. "Your blood pressure is excellent today, Mrs. Henderson. Better than it's been in days." "It's because I'm happy, dear," the elderly woman replied simply. "That little dog reminded me there are still good things out there waiting for me." News of the visit and its apparent benefits spread quickly among the nursing staff. Other patients began asking if they too could visit the famous dog. Emily knew they were venturing into uncharted territory. An informal visitation program certainly wasn't part of the hospital's standard procedures, and eventually it would reach the administration's ears. "We need to talk to Dr. Blackwell before this gets out of hand," she told Harold, while reviewing Mrs. Henderson's test results, which showed a significant improvement in oxygenation. "I agree," he replied, examining the same results with professional interest. "But let's take this data with us. There's an objective improvement here that can't be ignored." That same afternoon, they requested a meeting with the administrative director. To their surprise, Catherine received them almost immediately. "I see you didn't waste any time," the director remarked after hearing their report about Mrs. Henderson and their request to establish a formal protocol for therapeutic visits with the dog. "Less than a week and they're already turning my temporary allowance into a full hospital program." "The benefits are real, doctor," argued Nathan, presenting the test results. Just 15 minutes of interaction produced measurable improvement in the patient's vitals. And there's extensive scientific literature supporting this type of intervention. Catherine examined the papers meticulously, her face giving nothing away. "And the risks?" she finally asked. "Infections, allergies, potential injuries?" "We've developed a complete protocol," replied Emily, handing the director a folder they had carefully prepared. "It includes patient screening for allergies, disinfection before and after visits, constant monitoring by a healthcare professional, and clear limits on time and frequency." Catherine opened the folder, flipping through the pages attentively. The silence in the room was almost suffocating as she read. "Impressive," she remarked at last, closing the folder. "You've clearly put more thought into this than most projects that cross my desk." Nathan and Emily waited, tense for the final decision. "I'll approve a pilot phase," the director declared to their astonishment. 3 weeks, with rigorous monitoring and documentation of all results. At the end of that period, we'll reassess. "Thank you, Doctor," Emily exclaimed, barely containing her excitement. "Don't thank me yet, Nurse Bennett," Catherine warned. "If there's any incident, any complication, the program will be suspended immediately, and the two of you will be personally responsible." "We understand completely," Nathan assured. "We'll be extremely cautious." When they left the office, Emily couldn't resist a little jump of joy. "I can't believe she approved," she whispered to Nathan as they walked down the hall. "I thought at best she'd tolerate a few more days with Hero in the outdoor area." "There's more to that woman than meets the eye," Nathan mused. "She actually read our protocol. Most administrators would just pretend to read it and say no. Maybe we're about to discover the human side of Dr. Frostbite," Emily teased, still not quite believing the small victory they'd achieved. The following week, Mercy General Hospital's pilot animal-assisted therapy program officially began. Hero, now sporting an official collar identifying him as a therapy dog in training, participated in carefully monitored visits with selected patients. At first, only long-term recovery seniors were included, but soon doctors began referring. Other cases: a teenager with anorexia who refused to communicate with the staff, a middle-aged man battling depression after a stroke, a child undergoing cancer treatment, who had stopped responding to chemotherapy as expected. The preliminary results exceeded expectations. Patients who had barely interacted with the medical team began showing signs of engagement. Some showed physical improvements, more stable blood pressure, better sleep patterns, reduced need for pain medication. Mrs. Henderson, the program's first patient, became its most vocal advocate. Her recovery accelerated so significantly that her discharge, originally scheduled for the end of the month, was moved up by 2 weeks. "I'll only go home if you can guarantee I can visit Hero regularly," she told Nathan during her final checkup. "That dog saved my life just as much as you doctors did." Meanwhile, Emily and Nathan made regular visits to Deborah's farm to monitor the puppy's progress. To everyone's delight, the little ones were thriving. Their eyes had opened, they'd gained weight, and they'd begun exploring the world beyond their box. Mrs. Reynolds' daughter cared for them with devotion, sending daily photos to the WhatsApp group they'd created. "They're growing so fast," Emily remarked during one of these visits, watching the now playful, energetic kittens. "They'll be ready for adoption soon." "Some already have homes lined up," Deborah replied, with satisfaction. "One of the nurses at the hospital is taking 2, and my neighbor wants the orange one." "What about the other 3?" asked Harold, who was playing with one of the black kittens. "I'm thinking of keeping one," Deborah admitted. "I've grown attached to them." Emily looked at the kitten batting at Harold's fingers, feeling a wave of affection. "Maybe I could take this little one," she suggested. "Chloe might like the company." "What about you?" Deborah asked Harold. "Don't you want to adopt the last one?" The doctor hesitated, a wistful smile crossing his face. "My apartment is empty most of the time. It wouldn't be fair to the kitten." "We could figure something out," Emily blurted, then blushed when she realized the implication of her words. Harold looked at her, surprised, but not displeased. "Really?" he asked, a hopeful glint in his eyes. Deborah, sensing the moment, discreetly stepped away to feed the other animals on the farm, leaving the 2 alone with the kittens. "I mean," Emily fumbled, embarrassed, "we could work out an arrangement. Maybe you keep the kitten and I'll help care for it when you're on duty, and vice versa." "Or we could simplify things," Harold suggested, stepping closer. "I've been thinking a lot about us since our dinner last week, and how easy it was to work together, even in an unlikely situation like this." Emily's heart raced. That dinner had been wonderful, with a connection she'd rarely felt with anyone. In the weeks since, they'd gone out a few more times, and each meeting only confirmed their chemistry. "I've been thinking about it too," she admitted, smiling. "So how about we give it a try?" he proposed, taking her hand. "The 2 of us and 2 kittens. We can alternate between my apartment and yours, see how it goes. No pressure, just seeing where this takes us." A wave of happiness washed over Emily. It felt surreal that all of this had started with a stray dog showing up at the hospital, with a trash bag. "I want to try," she answered sincerely. Harold smiled, leaning in for a gentle kiss that sealed not just their agreement about the kittens, but also the beginning of something new and promising between them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Back at the hospital, the pilot program continued gaining momentum. Dr. Blackwell, initially skeptical, had begun occasionally visiting the sessions, quietly observing the interactions between patients and the dog. During one of these visits, Emily found her outside watching as Hero gently interacted with a child in a wheelchair. "The results are impressive," the director remarked, not taking her eyes off the scene. "This patient, Jason, hadn't spoken in 3 weeks after surgery. Now look at him." The boy, about 8 years old, was smiling and whispering words into the dog's ear. Hero listened with canine attentiveness, his head slightly tilted. "Hero has a special gift," Emily replied, also watching the interaction. "It's like he knows exactly what each patient needs." Dr. Blackwell nodded thoughtfully. "You know, Nurse Bennett, when I chose hospital administration over clinical practice, it was because I believed I could help more people by creating efficient systems than by treating patients one by one." It was the first time Emily had heard the director speak about any personal aspect of her life or career. "That's a valid perspective," she replied cautiously. The problem is, over time, it's easy to get lost in numbers and spreadsheets, and forget that at the end of the day, all of this exists to serve real people, Catherine continued, still not looking directly at Emily. People like Jason, like Mrs. Henderson. A contemplative silence fell between the two women. Why did you accept our proposal? Emily finally asked, curiosity overcoming her usual caution with the director. Honestly, everyone expected you to reject the idea immediately. An almost imperceptible smile appeared on Catherine's typically impassive face. Maybe I was tired of being predictable, she replied cryptically. Then, after a pause, or maybe, just maybe, I also grew up with animals and know the power they hold. Before Emily could fully process this revelation, movement at the hospital entrance caught her attention. Nathan was quickly approaching them, his expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. Emily, Dr. Blackwell, he greeted, slightly out of breath. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. What happened? The director asked instantly. Alert! It's Hero, Nathan explained, glancing at the dog still interacting with little Jason. We finally managed to locate his microchip. He has a microchip. Emily was surprised. How did we miss that before? It was displaced, well below. The area where we usually check, Nathan replied. Trevor found it during the full checkup we did yesterday, and we just received the registration details. And, Catherine pressed, sensing there was more to the story. Nathan took a deep breath before continuing. The dog is registered under William Harrison's name, Dr. William Harrison. The name dropped like a bomb. Dr. William Harrison had been the founder of Mercy General Hospital, a revered physician in the region who had passed away nearly a year ago. His portrait still adorned the hospital's main lobby. Impossible, Catherine declared, visibly shaken. Dr. Harrison never mentioned having a dog, and his passing was almost a year ago. According to the records, the dog was reported missing exactly 11 months ago, Nathan continued. It coincides with the date of the doctor's passing. Emily looked at Hero with new eyes. The dog now lay patiently as little Jason stroked his golden fur, both oblivious to the conversation that could determine his fate. Has Dr. Harrison's family been notified? Catherine asked, regaining her professional composure. Not yet, Nathan replied. I wanted to inform you first, given the significance of this for the hospital. Catherine nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the dog, as if seeing him for the first time. Contact the family immediately, Dr. Miller. Inform them we've found the animal and that he's being well cared for here at the hospital. Yes, ma'am. As Nathan walked away to make the call, Catherine turned to Emily. Dr. Harrison was my mentor, she revealed quietly. He's the one who brought me to this hospital, who insisted I had potential for leadership when everyone, including myself, doubted it. Emily didn't know what to say. She had never seen the director show any vulnerability. He firmly believed in the power of compassion in medicine, Catherine continued, her gaze distant as if reminiscing. He used to say hospitals aren't made of walls and equipment, but of people who care. Ironic that I, his protégé, became known as the Ice Queen. There was genuine sorrow in her voice that deeply moved Emily. It's never too late to honor his legacy in a new way, she suggested gently. Catherine turned to look at the dog again, now with something that seemed almost like reverence. He found his way back, she murmured, more to herself than to Emily. After all this time, he found his way back home. The news that Hero was actually Rocky, the missing dog of the late founder of the hospital, spread quickly among the staff, taking on almost mythical tones with each retelling of the story. The next day, an elegant woman in her 70s arrived. At the hospital, Elizabeth Harrison, widow of Dr. William. Accompanied by a middle-aged man whom Emily assumed was her son, she was personally greeted by Dr. Blackwell at the entrance. Nathan and Emily, as the leads of the program and the dog's caretakers, were called to join the meeting. Both were nervous. After all, the family had every right to take the dog, which would mean the end of the program they had worked so hard to establish. Where is he? Mrs. Harrison asked as soon as formal greetings were exchanged. Her voice held controlled urgency, the dignity of someone accustomed to keeping composure even in emotional moments. This way, ma'am, Catherine gestured toward the outdoor area where Rocky Hero usually stayed during the day. As they turned the corner and spotted the dog, Mrs. Harrison brought a hand to her lips, her eyes instantly welling up. "Rocky," she called softly. The dog lying in the shade lifted his head abruptly. For a moment he seemed frozen, as if he couldn't believe what his senses were telling him. Then, in a movement that surprised everyone with its speed, he sprang up and ran toward the woman, barking and whining in a way they had never seen before. Mrs. Harrison knelt, ignoring the elegance of her light linen suit, and embraced the animal, who now jumped and licked her face in unrestrained joy. "My God, it's really him," murmured her son, equally moved. "After all this time, we searched for months." Emily and Nathan watched the scene with mixed emotions. The joy of the reunion was genuine, but they also felt a pang of sadness at the inevitable separation. When the dog finally calmed slightly, Mrs. Harrison stood, continuously stroking his head as he stayed glued to her side. "How did he end up here?" she asked, looking at the professionals. Nathan recounted the whole story, how Rocky had appeared at the hospital's door carrying a bag of kittens, how they had rescued the little ones, how the dog had refused to leave, and finally, how he had become part of an emerging animal therapy program that was helping many patients. Mrs. Harrison listened carefully, occasionally glancing at her son as if seeking confirmation she wasn't dreaming. "William always said Rocky was special," she remarked when Nathan finished. "He rescued him from the street 4 years ago, already grown. He said he'd never seen a dog so smart and intuitive. He disappeared the day—" Her son hesitated. "The day my husband left us," Mrs. Harrison finished. "William had a heart attack at home. Rocky was with him. When the ambulance arrived, the dog was so agitated they had to lock him in another room. Somehow he got out and we never saw him again. We searched for months. And now he's back, right at the hospital my father helped build," her son reflected. "And even saving lives in his own way. Seems like something Dad would have appreciated." Catherine, who had been silently observing until then, stepped forward. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I know Rocky is legally your family's property, and you have every right to take him home today. But I'd like you to understand the impact he's had here at the hospital." The director then explained the pilot program in detail, sharing preliminary data on patient improvements and describing specific cases that had been positively affected by the dog's presence. "William always spoke about the importance of holistic care," Mrs. Elizabeth said when Dr. Blackwell finished, "about how medicine shouldn't just treat the body, but also the spirit." She gazed at Rocky, who remained faithfully by her side, and then at her son. A silent understanding seemed to pass between them. "I have a proposal," she finally declared. "Rocky has clearly found a purpose here, one that honors William's legacy. I suggest he stays at the hospital during the day as part of this program, but spends nights and weekends at our home." The suggestion took everyone by surprise. "You'd be that generous?" Emily asked, barely containing her joy. "It's not generosity, my dear," Mrs. Elizabeth replied with a gentle smile. "It's recognizing William's wishes. He always said hospitals needed more warmth, more connection. Rocky seems to be providing that in his own way." Her son nodded in agreement. "Besides," Mrs. Elizabeth added, looking directly at Dr. Blackwell, "I've been thinking a lot about how to honor my husband's memory. Perhaps a formal, well-structured animal therapy program would be the perfect project for the Harrison Foundation to support." Dr. Blackwell's usually composed eyes showed genuine surprise. "That would be extraordinary, Mrs. Elizabeth, transformative for the hospital." "Then it's settled," the elegant woman smiled, stroking the dog, who seemed to understand the agreement perfectly. "Rocky will have 2 homes, just as he's always had 2 hearts, one for our family and one for this hospital." 3 months later, the transformation was undeniable. What had begun as an unlikely encounter with a stray dog carrying a trash bag had evolved into Mercy General Hospital's structured animal-assisted therapy program, officially supported by the newly established Dr. William Harrison Foundation. Rocky, now formally recognized by his original name but still affectionately called Hero by many, had a set routine. He arrived in the morning with Mrs. Elizabeth or her son, spent the day participating in therapy sessions with carefully selected patients, and returned home in the evening. He was no longer alone in his mission. 2 other therapy dogs, properly trained and certified, had joined the program, each with specific skills for different patient needs. Emily had been officially appointed as the program coordinator, a role that combined her nursing expertise with her love for animals. Dr. Miller, in addition to his regular medical duties, served as a consultant, actively helping develop protocols and select patients. The kittens, now grown and healthy, had found loving homes. Emily kept 2, the orange one and one of the black ones, who got along surprisingly well with Chloe, her older cat. Dr. Miller had adopted one of the white kittens, which often stayed at Emily's apartment when he was on call. These stays, in fact, were becoming more frequent, as were the nights when Dr. Miller simply didn't return to his own place. Their relationship flourished, built on the solid foundation of that first shared adventure, and strengthened by their shared passion for their work. The biggest surprise, however, had been Dr. Blackwell's transformation. The director, once known for her exclusive focus on numbers and protocols, had become a passionate advocate for the program. Her administrative efficiency remained impeccable, but now it was tempered with a newfound willingness to consider the human impact of every decision. On a particularly busy afternoon, Emily found her outside, sitting quietly on a bench while watching Rocky interact with a small group of hospitalized children. "Any problems, Doctor?" Emily asked, concerned by this unusual pause in the director's always hectic routine. "No, Nurse Bennett, just taking a moment to observe the results of our work," Catherine replied, gesturing to the space beside her on the bench. Emily accepted the silent invitation and sat down. "You know," the director continued after a few moments of companionable silence, "I spent years believing efficiency and compassion were somehow mutually exclusive. That to do a good job as an administrator, I had to put numbers ahead of people." "It's a difficult balance," Emily agreed. "Yes, but not impossible, as you've shown me." Catherine turned slightly to face her. "This hospital's metrics have never been better. Reduced average hospital stays, high patient satisfaction scores, lower staff turnover, and it all started with an act of disobedience that, under other circumstances, I would have punished severely." There was an almost light-hearted tone in her voice that Emily had never heard before. "Dr. William would be proud," Catherine continued, her gaze returning to Rocky and the children. "Not just of the program, but of how his dog taught us a lesson he tried to instill in me for years." "What lesson?" Emily asked, genuinely curious. "That hospitals heal people, not illnesses," the director replied, "and that healing comes in many forms, some of them impossible to capture in spreadsheets or protocols." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. It was Nathan, accompanied by a man in his 50s carrying an elegant briefcase and wearing an impeccable suit. "Dr. Blackwell, Emily," Nathan greeted them. "This is Dr. Bradley from Philadelphia University Medical Center. He's here to learn about our assisted therapy program." Catherine stood promptly, extending her hand. "Welcome, Doctor. It's a pleasure to have you." "The pleasure is mine," the visitor replied, shaking her hand. "We've been following your published results with great interest. Quite impressive for a regional hospital." "We have an exceptional team," Catherine answered, with a brief nod of acknowledgement to Nathan and Emily. "And an even more exceptional dog." The next few hours were spent showing the visitor every aspect of the program, the developed protocols, documented results, adapted facilities, and staff training sessions. The university hospital's interest represented a significant validation of their work. "You've turned a potentially problematic situation into an innovative program," Dr. Bradley remarked at the end of the visit. "We're considering implementing something similar in our pediatric wing, and we'll certainly use your model as a reference." After the visitor left, Emily, Nathan, and Catherine briefly met to discuss expanding the program to include visits for isolated patients, using special hygiene protocols. "It's risky, but if implemented correctly, the benefits could outweigh the risks for certain patients," Nathan argued. "I agree," Catherine said, surprising them both with her quick approval. "Develop a detailed protocol and present it at the next committee meeting." When the meeting ended and Catherine left to attend another commitment, Nathan and Emily stayed behind, exchanging disbelieving smiles. "Did you hear that?" whispered Emily. She agreed without raising 15 objections. "First, I think we've created a monster," joked Nathan, putting his arm around her waist. "A compassionate administrative monster." Emily laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Speaking of creations, I have some news," she said, her heart beating slightly faster. Nathan looked at her curiously. "Good or bad?" "Depends on how you view a major life change," replied Emily, biting her lip nervously. He turned to face her fully, his hands now on her shoulders. "Emily Bennett, you're scaring me. What happened?" She took a deep breath, gathering courage. "Remember those tests I took last week? The results came in today." Nathan's face paled. "Is everything okay with you?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm pregnant," she stated simply, watching his reaction intently. For a moment, Nathan seemed unable to process the information. Then, slowly, his face transformed into pure joy. A baby?" he stammered, the words escaping him. Emily nodded, feeling tears of happiness forming in her eyes. 10 weeks. Everything seems perfectly normal so far." In a move that took her by surprise, Nathan hugged her and spun, her in the air, laughing in a way she'd never seen before, with complete abandon, pure joy. "Careful," she protested, laughing too. "There's a little passenger on board now." He gently set her down, but kept her in his arms, his face inches from hers. "I love you," he declared with an intensity that took her breath away. "I love you more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," she replied, tears now flowing freely, "and I'm absolutely terrified and happy at the same time." Nathan wiped her tears with his thumbs, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "We'll do this together," he promised, "every step of the way." At that moment, Rocky entered the hallway, returning from his session with the kids, as if he knew something important was happening. He approached the couple, looking at them both with that canine attention that seemed to understand more than should be possible. "Hey, buddy," Nathan bent down to pet the dog's head. "Looks like your family is about to grow a little bigger." Rocky tilted his head as if considering this information, then gently nuzzled Emily's belly. "He knows," she murmured, surprised and delighted. Somehow he knows. Nathan smiled, a new certainty forming in his heart. "You know what this means, right?" he asked, taking her hand. "We can't put off that conversation about shared living anymore." Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. "I guess it's time to officially unify our feline family," she agreed with a smile. "And our human family," Nathan added, his expression growing more serious. "Marry me, Emily, not just because of the baby, but because I realized, ever since that day with the black trash bag at the hospital entrance, that you're exactly the person I want to build a life with." The proposal, as unexpected as it was sincere, left her momentarily speechless. The entire journey of the past months flashed through her mind like a movie. The persistent dog in the rain, the shivering puppies in the bag, the sleepless nights, caring for them, the program born against all odds, and Nathan steady, strong, gentle by her side every step of the way. "Yes," she finally answered, her voice steady despite the tears. "Yes to everything." Rocky, as if approving the decision, gave a short, happy bark, making the couple laugh. "I think we have the Godfather's blessing," joked Nathan, petting the dog. That evening, when Rocky went home with Mrs. Elizabeth as usual, Emily and Nathan walked together to the parking lot, their hands intertwined, their hearts full of possibilities for the future. "You know," Emily remarked as Nathan opened the car door for her, "if someone had told me 4 months ago that a stray dog carrying a trash bag would completely change my life, I would have laughed." "Life has a funny way of surprising us," Nathan agreed, leaning in to kiss her softly. "And thank goodness it does." As they drove home, which would now officially be their home together, the sun set over the horizon of Willowbrook, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, like a colorful promise of even brighter days to come. And at Mercy General Hospital, the newly installed plaque at the entrance gleamed under the lights. "Animal Assisted Therapy Program, a legacy of Dr. William Harrison." Below, in smaller letters, "Started by Rocky, the dog who taught us to heal in ways we never imagined." The end. Did you enjoy this heartwarming journey of transformation? Leave a like, share your tears and smiles in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories. Your company makes all the difference in our journey.